Almost without it being noticed, her hair started smouldering and before long caught the Queen's attention. It took only about 10 seconds for the back of the Queen's sister's head to start blazing away, and Margaret knew nothing about it. The Queen, in slight amusement, turned and said, "Oh, look, Margot's on fire." A quick-thinking member of staff patted it out with his hands, while Margaret looked at him in horror as if to say, "What the hell do you think you're doing? Do you know who I am?" It was only when it was pointed out to her what had actually happened that her face changed from horror to one of genuine shock and concern for herself. I'm surprised she didn't know by the smell of the burnt hair, which isn't pleasant, I can vouch for that. In a way, it preempted the time a few years later when she had a nasty accident getting into a scalding bath, which happened just after I had left Clarence House. She ran the bath herself, didn't test it, and just got straight in. It was boiling hot, and she scalded herself badly. But the Queen's reaction to her sister catching fire was typical. When people have accidents, when they fall over or trip up, it's sometimes very hard to stop yourself laughing, even if they may have hurt themselves, and the Queen was very much the laughing sort. She saw humour in potential tragedy. She's extremely bright, very much so, and very funny. I was really quite lucky to spend so much time in her presence, but I did so because, as an equerry, I wasn't just contracted to look after the Queen Mother. I was part of a team responsible for any member of royalty, and this included the head of state. And the Queen, if I ever turned up at one of her dinner parties, would always make a beeline for me and say, "Colin, how are you? It's great to see you." The Queen was very friendly, and she's so knowledgeable about everything from art to history to politics. You name it, she knows something about it. Her knowledge of current affairs is second to none, unlike the Queen Mother's, and the Queen would let her opinions be known. She is quite forthright. Obviously in public she's guarded, but in private she does speak her mind, and she doesn't approve of the current trend of making press statements, which she feels that on occasion she has been bounced into doing. The best example of this was during the aftermath of the death of Princess Diana, when there was a massive public clamouring for her to address the nation, which she did in the end, but rather reluctantly. But she's not a timid person by any stretch of the imagination. She just recognises that there is a time and a place for everything. One of the most memorable encounters I had with her was during pre-dinner drinks at Balmoral, when she started telling me about the time Michael Fagan broke into her bedroom back in July 1982. I remember saying to her, "That must have been very scary for you." "Oh no," she said with a smile. "I wasn't scared in the slightest." She added, "When I woke, I just saw him there at the end of my bed, and for a split second I thought it was a member of staff. A second later, I realised it was somebody from the outside." She said, "As soon as I realised this, I thought, oh well, I'll just have to talk to him." What did slightly alarm her was when she realised he was dripping blood from a nasty gash on his hand. She told me, "I just asked him what he was doing in my bedroom. He said he'd come to chat, and so we chatted. I asked him his name and about his life and family. To be honest, I didn't really have much time to be alarmed." Eventually, she said she told him, "Look, you really shouldn't be here." He replied, "Yes, I know." There then followed a farcical situation in which she picked up the phone and asked the operator manning the palace switchboard to contact the police. The message was passed on, but the police didn't respond. So the Queen continued chatting to him, and she said to me, "He asked me about my children, and I said I had 4, and gave their names. Then we chatted about his children." She then tried to summon a chambermaid by pressing a button. Again, no one came. "He asked for a cigarette," she told me, "but I said I didn't smoke." Eventually, a chambermaid did enter the Queen's chamber, only to see Fagin rush out in horror and get a footman who seized him. All the time, as the Queen told me, they just carried on talking. She added, "Really, Colin, I wasn't scared. The whole thing was just so surreal. He just came in, we chatted, and then he went, without incident. And that was that." But I think it did rattle her, because when he'd gone, she got up and had a couple of whiskies and asked an awful lot of questions about her security.